So I'm excited to paint some fruit with everybody, and although fruit seems like a simple subject matter, as Manet said, a painter can say all he wants to with fruit or flowers or even clouds. So sometimes the most everyday object can be the best. This is one of my favorite fruit paintings, Frida Kahlo, her last one she painted, called Viva la Vida, and it's about death and dying and fertility, and watermelons are related to the traditional Mexican Day of the Dead. So there's a lot in here. This is currently is a famous Chagall painting of strawberries that sold for 26 million, and is currently the center of a giant battle between France and the Kimball Art Museum in Texas about who gets to keep it. Which one of my favorite. And this Manet fruit, very typical of his later fruit paintings, where it's a dull background and the star is the fruit, and he spends all this time getting it right. And these are some of his peaches. So fruit painting, there's a lot to it. You can tell it's very symbolic. It can tell us about a lot about the place and the of origin and the person painting it, and you can really experiment with it. Cezanne totally experimented. We saw his work change over the years. We saw these great, throughout history, depictions of fruit in Chinese and Japanese scrolls. You know, fruits were part of the shifts in movement to Cubism and symbolism and surrealism, and it's just really, really cool subject matter. And when you start to think about it, there's a million different ways to approach it, which was what we're going to think about today. How can we paint this fruit numerous times in this Warhol of cantaloupes? How many ways can you paint fruit? Well, how many ways can we paint a bowl of fruit? This is a folk art approach where you really feel it. I hope you're going to look at all these and get some ideas of what you might want to do. Lichtenstein, a very muted black and white, which obviously is not the actual color of the fruit. You could experiment with size and scale and palette. Is your fruit casting shadows, or is it flat? Are you trying to be realistic or not? Would you like to be like Kahlo and put symbolism in your artwork? And how could you do that? Maybe your fruit has a specific meaning to your culture. Maybe, sorry, I have multiple dogs here today. Maybe you want to play with scale and have something huge and look at this pile, and then the bird and the flag in there. And you can insert objects and symbols. So maybe the fruit is just part of a larger story you want to tell us about us or your world or your history. There's a lot you can do because of the simplicity of the shapes. It really lets you play with them. Or maybe you want to spend a lot of your time today color mixing, really getting colors right, being as realistic as possible, really trying to look at every bit and every nuance of the green and the reds and the pinks. That is a worthy way to spend your time. And we're going to talk a lot about mixing secondary colors like orange and violet and green. Or you could be hyper realist like Janet Fish. Spend your time trying to get this perfect. I cannot help you much with that because I could not paint these. I mean, it would take me years probably to figure out how she put this one. It's so good. Play with color. Maybe you want to do a completely tonalist kind of palette, or you want to do look at Bonnard and do some really extreme bright yellows, and then the fruits are muted, which could be fun. We think of fruit as being, bright colors, but really a lot of them are muted. Or maybe like Matisse, this is just part of, you create a pattern with your lemons and your fruit. This is a beautiful approach. As far as the paint strokes, maybe you want to be a little more pointillist or impressionist. Or you could play with value and saturation value. Look at how light and bright and saturated the fruit is in that dark background, versus Matisse's fruit are almost more desaturated and dull. So we can talk about playing with some of that. And again, note if you love any of these paintings, then we can go back and be like, how do you create that version? Look at how bright and saturated that is in a sea of dullness. And look at this amazing light in this Bonnard that hits the table, and then the bottom half is dark. We're going to talk about shadows. You could put your fruit in an interior scene. You do not have to paint what I have in front of you today. You could paint your kitchen table with the fruit you're going to be painting. You could have your watermelon be on a beach. You could be in Far Rockaway enjoying a beach party. So really, it's up to you today what you are going to paint. We are just there to give you the skills to do it. Cubism, maybe you want to be inspired by Braque and Picasso, and take apart your objects, take apart your fruit, um, and break it down into different skewed, broken up shapes. Maybe I'm going to try and light part of the fruit really dramatically, so that means it'll have very high contrast. It'll have a lot of brightness, and then part of it will be really dark. We'll talk more about that. Um, or you could just have black background is cool to have. It's very, old Dutch, and then it really allows for the brightness of the fruit. So I don't know, it's going to depend on your mood too. Maybe you are feeling real moody and melancholy. This could be what you want to do. Or if you're having a great day, you might want to completely saturate everything and make it bright and light and like an impressionist. So we'll do a couple paintings, so you can definitely experiment. Maybe you would like to explore line, like Van Gogh did with his apple paintings, and his oranges and grapes, and his famous potato paintings. So yeah, line could infuse, you could build out your shapes with line, build out the background with line, little short strokes. Matisse, often painted his fruit as line work, kind of. You could do that, or you could look at pop art. You could try and recreate Lichtenstein, which obviously these are usually prints and not paintings, but there's no reason why you couldn't adopt his dark graphic lines, and do your own. Bonnard, obviously, he, like Cezanne and Matisse, will play with shape and perspective. So often the tables look like we're looking down on them, or they're skewed. Some are tilted, like the space is flattened. I mean, some of these, like Cezanne especially, you'd have to be on a stepladder or a cherry picker to be getting this perspective. So maybe you want to play with that. Also, first timers, it's just a great excuse not to have a perfect perspective. You can just say, "Oh, I meant to do that," or you could really flatten it, graphic like a Matisse. But again, maybe you're going to be like, "I want the palette of Cezanne. I want to learn how to do that. I want to do like moody blues," and I can help you do that. And another option is to do what's like a dominant color painting, where the majority of your color is going to be the same painting. So this is Tamayo paintings. They're majority red, but then when he introduces the green, it's very powerful and dramatic, contrasty. Or the Van Gogh, where it's majority yellow or majority earth tone. So I can't wait to paint with you all later. See you soon. Bye.